Hey everyone. In this tutorial, I'll show you how to quickly model one of these trefoil-like star shapes you see here in this render. Um, it's an aesthetic little shape you can use as an interesting piece for, say, a necklace, earring, or some other jewelry object, or even a 3D print if you're into that. So here's how we can get this object in 3dsmax. Alright, so we'll start a new max scene here, and first thing we'll do is bring a cylinder into the scene. Okay, now the thing we'll want to pay attention to here, depending on, I'm just doing this arbitrarily, but eventually if you wanted to model this to scale, the important thing in this first step is to make sure your radius and your height are exactly the same. So just as an example, in this one I'll do 10 centimeters for the radius, and then I'll want to change the height, of course, to 10 centimeters as well. And the reason for this is because it'll provide square polygons on the sides. Alright, you'll see what I mean in a second. We'll take a height segment of 2, cap segment is 2, and we want 6 sides. Okay, so those are the parameters that you'll want for your cylinder. Okay, and once you have that, you could go ahead and collapse to editable poly. Alright, and the next step is to go into element mode, and in the front viewport you can go ahead and hold shift and then drag down a copy. Drag it down far enough that you're provided some room in between the two elements here. So clone to element, and make sure you have a few units of space between them. Okay, and you'll see why in a moment here. Alright, so once we have that, we can go ahead into polygon mode, and in the top element, go ahead and select the 2 polygons that make up the one side of our cylinder here, and then go ahead and skip the next 2 polygons and select the other ones, and so on. So you're going to go and skip around the object and select the polygons like this. See? Alright, so once you've done that to the top object, go ahead to the bottom and select your first set of polygons opposite of what the top one is. Alright, so we'll go around the object in the same manner, except we're selecting the opposite group of polygons. Alright, so now that we have our selection set, we'll go ahead and apply a bevel. And again, the height here, it all depends on your scale of what you're modeling to, but the important thing to remember here is that whatever you choose for your height, your width will be half of that. So let's say, for instance, we're choosing 20 centimeters for the width. The outline will then be 10 centimeters. Alright, so then we have something that looks like this. Okay, and we'll accept that. And then with the polygons still selected, go ahead and delete those. We don't need them now. Okay, and then the next step, in front view, or side view, but I prefer front, we're going to go ahead and select all of the middle polygons on both objects. So what you're really doing here is selecting the bottom half of the first element and the top half of the bottom element. Okay, so once you have that, go ahead and delete them, and you're left with this. And we're going to go ahead and go around the objects and select these remaining polygons in between our bevels, and delete those as well on the top and on the bottom. Alright, so now we have this, and from here we could go ahead and move the bottom element all the way up until it is till the edges are just about touching with the top element. All right, so in the front viewport or the side viewport, all right, that's why I'm using a 4 heads up here. In the front, you'll want to raise that until the edges appear to be touching. All right, but in perspective, you'll have something like this where they're not perfectly aligned. And that's okay for our next step. What we're going to do here is in vertex mode, we're going to go ahead and select, we're going to weld these, but we want to weld them at the median center point in between each vertex. We don't want to target weld one to the other. We want to weld them right in the center, at the center point of what would be the center point between each vertex. So for that we're going to use collapse, and you can see that that brings them right to the center point here. Alright, so we'll go around and we'll select all of the points that will, and if you notice that those two didn't weld, and the reason for that is because we need to select our bottom element, alright, and flip the normals. Okay, if you don't flip the normals, you won't be able to weld the points all the way around. Some of them may weld, but others will not. Alright, so we need to flip the normals on the bottom. Now all of our normals will align correctly, and we'll be able to go ahead back in and collapse them, okay, and weld them. Alright, so just go ahead around the object and grab all of these points here and weld them up. Alright, just make sure you're grabbing the appropriate points here. Alright, and collapse, you know, it's one at a time basically. So go around, make sure you're all welded up here. Don't capture anything, just make sure you're not capturing anything on the opposite side that you don't want unintentionally. Alright. Okay, so we're almost done here. This should be the last set, I believe. Okay. And I think we're all welded up here. Okay, so the next step here will be in the, go ahead in the top view and ring select all of those polygons in the middle, and then select the triangles, and then select similar to grab the same, exactly the same polygons on the bottom, so basically all the central polygons in this shape. And we'll switch to our scale tool, and in the top viewport we will scale it down roughly 50%. Okay. Alright, so we have it, we scaled it down 50%, and then we have something like this, and the next step will be to go ahead and affect pivot only in your hierarchy tab and center to object. You want to make sure that your pivot point from this point forward is centered, because that will be very significant for the following steps in the procedure. Okay, so now that your pivot point is centered, you can go ahead and apply a turbo smooth here, and you should have a shape like this. And if you look at it closely, you'll see that all of the holes should be of the same shape, okay, and the same size basically. Alright, and we just have a pretty cool surface here right at this point. Alright, but one iteration of turbo smooth is all you need right now, and from this point we'll also apply a shell. And now this is where you have to pay attention to your inner and outer amounts, because if you just use one or the other, what's going to happen is these holes will begin to close on one, in one portion of the object, but not on the other. So you'll have holes that are not of equal size. So in order to correct that, we will use an inner and outer amounts of exactly the same. So 0.5 for the outer amount and 0.5 in this case for the inner amount. Whatever your scale is and your modeling scale is, you could, choose whatever thickness you want, but just make sure that the inner and outer values of the shell are the same. Okay, so now we have holes that are of the same size all the way around again. All right. So from this point, we'll apply a relax modifier on top of that, and we'll give it 3 iterations, keeping the boundary points fixed. All right, so 3 iterations, and we end up with this. All right, so from this point, we can add a squeeze modifier, and this is where our shape will begin to become apparent. Squeeze modifier on the radial squeeze with an amount of negative 0.6 in this case, and we end up with something that looks like a minimal surface, something like a chen-gackstatter or some kind of hyperbolic shape. All right, so I'm using a radial squeeze of negative 0.6, but you could take it to another level if you want to, if you prefer. All right, but it doesn't have to be precise. It's just whatever you think looks appealing at this point. All right, so from here, the next step is to apply an X-form modifier, go down to the gizmo level, and we'll scale on the Z-axis down to, I'd say, about 50%. So scale it down on the Z, 50%, and we have something like this now. Okay, and we can apply another edit poly on top of that. And if you're happy with the results here, go ahead and collapse 2 if you want. And this will be a good point to do an unwrap if you wanted to texture this. All right, because the next step is just simply to add turbo smooth. One option here is to go ahead on the edges and ring, and we'll do a connect with 2 segments, and we'll pinch them out a little bit. 2 segments, and we'll pinch them just a little bit out, and that'll provide us with a nice sharp edge here when we turbo smooth. Okay, and we'll give it 2 iterations, and this is the result. Alright, so that's how to get this shape, and you can apply another iteration. If you're going to 3D print it, I would recommend maybe 1 more iteration of turbo smooth, but it might not be necessary. You could do an STL check on it, and I think you'll have a good object here for printing. You might want to make the edges a little thicker. You can always keep your stack intact and go back to thicken them up if you're going to print it, just so you have a solid object here. All right, so hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I think it's a pretty cool looking shape. I don't really know what to call it, but I was kind of pleased with the way it looked in the render, so thought I'd share it with you. Okay, so thank you, and stay tuned for more. I'll be coming out with another video probably within the next few days. All right, so thanks for watching. See you soon.